What's up, you guys? It's your girl, Fran. I am here to bring you a intro to Vinyasa. So this is really geared towards beginners, but it also can really be a great way to revisit things that maybe you've just gotten in this routine mode. So we're gonna really break down postures, slow things down, have props. So if you have blocks, please grab them. You can also use books too as tools, but these will come in handy, especially if your flexibility just isn't right where you want it to be. So I want to start us in tabletop. We're just going to get right into some of these elements that we go through our vinyasa. So there may be a little bit more speaking involved, but we're going to be moving while we're doing it. So come on down, hands and knees. And this is a really essential part of our practice in vinyasa. We've got our shoulders stacked on top of our wrists and palms really planted to the ground. I want your index fingers, so look at your index fingers. You want them parallel to the sides of the mat. Now, hips should also be on top of the knees. They shouldn't be too far forward. They shouldn't be too far back. That way we start to get into different postures. So let's just start out taking some inhales and exhales through cat and cow. These are really not meant to be super structured. I want you to just start to feel this into the low back. So on your exhale breath, you round. And you feel this round all the way into that upper back. See how my chin's tucking in towards my chest. And you can stay here for an extra breath if you want. But on your inhales, you scoop forward. Maybe even a little soft elbow bend. You can kind of see that happening for me. And then you open up through the collarbones. Your tailbone lifts up. And then exhale, round in the spine again. Tuck the chin in. Inhale, open it up. Tabletop is something you probably will always or most often do in a vinyasa class, and it's a great way to set yourself up for when we get into those other postures like our vinyasa portion or our downward facing dog. You want to have a nice, strong, solid stance in the hands right now. And then when we're talking about our breath, we move with our breath. So your inhales, I'll say you cue and you change position. Your exhales, you round into this. So just take a few more rounds of this. I'm going to let you kind of explore. It feels really good to kind of move side to side into your hips a little bit, but always staying focused on where your hands are in space. So your hands are still, fingers are still facing forward. And we're gonna also stretch out our wrists before we get into more weight on our hands, because wrist injuries can definitely happen in a vinyasa practice since we are in contact with the floor a lot more. But really, this is all about the back, just getting into those tight areas. Good. So now you've had a little bit of weight onto the hands. And if you do have any wrist issues too, you can always come up onto fists. I see this a lot in class. So you can do fists. It's a little bit less stable. You don't have as much surface area, but that's a good alternative. Or you can also be on forearms. So done with our tabletop and cat-cows. I want you just to sit back onto your heels. If you want a little bonus foot stretch, keep your toes tucked underneath you. We're going to warm up our wrists. So just interlace your hands and just roll out the wrists one direction and then the other. Do a little wave, right? We're gonna get to a place where eventually you'll kind of start to feel this flow, this rhythm of class. But for now, we really had to break down each part of it. And that tabletop, to me, is one of the most essentials. So I like warming up with that, getting into the low back. You just start to have a little bit more awareness of the whole body in a much shorter condensed space. Let's add in more rest here. So bring your hands out in front of you. So palms face to each other. Cross right hand over the left. Interlace the hands again, and then pull the hands in towards the chest and then pull them away. So like I was saying, wrists are a very common injury. Or can be, depending on, if you're not quite aware with where your hand should be. So I'll walk through a lot of where the finger placement is and where you want shoulders in line with wrist, stuff like that. Let's unwind and then switch sides. Left hand goes over the right, interlace hands, bring the hands back through the heart, and then pull them away. All the time here, our breath is still present. Even if you can't engage in some more advanced breath like Ujjayi, we're working to always think about breathing, so we're not holding our breath in postures. Good. All right, unwind the arms, and then shake out those wrists. Roll out those the wrists individually. Good. All right. Now, we're gonna come to a forward fold at the back of our mat. So I want you just to push yourself up. It doesn't even have to be a downward dog. We're not there yet. And then just walk your hands in towards your feet. Your knees are gonna bend a lot to start in this forward fold. Your chest drapes over the thighs. Now you can even add in blocks here as a little assistance too, depending on where your hamstrings are, where the flexibility is. I want you to be able to drop your head heavy. Those of you that are more comfortable, maybe your hands come to the head to make that head even a little bit heavier. You stretch this through the neck. This should feel pretty good here. You feel this into your hamstrings a lot, but also it's a great way to get into the low back as well. So the knees bend, more low back stretch. And if you straighten the legs, more into the hamstrings. But we're still just working the chest towards the thighs. Forward fold is an element of our vinyasa, so I want to just get you comfortable with this. And then let's take a little halfway lift. We're going to flow through this a few times. So halfway lift, inhale, just a nice flat back. So notice my shoulders are almost in line with my hips. And if your hips are way behind your heels, I want you to stack them more over on top of the heel. Think more weight into the ball mound. Exhale, fold it right back down. Inhale, lift halfway up. You may even start to venture your hands to your shins if you're comfortable with that. Exhale, fold in. Let's do it one more time. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold in. And your feet are hip width distance apart. We're gonna roll ourselves up. So heavy bend into the knees. Roll up one vertebra at a time. Your head comes up last. Big shoulder roll up by the ears and then down the back. And then let's take it forward. Shoulder roll up by the ears and forward. Good. So you're at the back of the mat. I'm going to face you guys so you can just see more foot awareness and connection. Tadasana, that's our mountain pose. You're going to see that a lot in a vinyasa class. So Tadasana traditionally at the top of your mat, your big toes are touching and there's a little space between the heels. You can also have your feet at hip width distance apart. Now we often refer root to rise, so we really think about every single element of our feet position all the way up through the crown of the head. So I want you to look down at your feet for a second. You spread all your toes, lift your toes off and then spread all of your toes, and then one by one, bring them down to the ground. So that really gives you this amazing grip even into the toes. My toes came in handy when I was on a 4-inch wide balance beam as a gymnast. So think that you're going to be balancing on the skinny little thing, even though we have our whole mat. So the ball mound of the feet connected to the ground, your heel connected. Now let your palms come by your side. If you're going for this big toes touch, little space between the heels, let's give it a try here. Otherwise you can always widen stance to hip width distance. Palms face forward. I want you to tuck your tailbone. So now I'm going to turn profile so you can see what this looks like. So tailbone tucked, palms face forward, and my shoulders are active, right? They're squeezing down the back. Now, I'm not bananaing in the back and letting my tailbone go out, tailbone tucked, and that actually forces me to wrap my rib cage in. You're gonna hear all of these cues a lot as you start to take more of my classes in that vinyasa practice. So think belly button towards the spine, draw everything in. Your front ribs here, it's almost like we were knitting them together, bring them in. Now, palms face forward, let's start back down with the feet. Your toes are gluing down into the ground. That's gonna help activate through your arches. Now think, once your arches, you go up into the inner thighs. Those inner thighs are squeezing together. The tailbone is tucked, core engaged, rib cage knitting in. You work your way up to your shoulders, draw the shoulder blades in. And then you've got your chin parallel to the floor. It's not tucked in, just parallel to the floor. Nice long crown of the head. Imagine a string attached right at the top of the head, pulling you up. So then you feel this lengthening. You're decompressing the spine. So Tadasana is actually incredibly active right here. It's a strong, powerful stance. It means mountain pose, right? So mountains are strong and beautiful and big. So make that presence, that kind of presence here in Tadasana. Let's reach our arms up overhead. Take a big stretch up and you lengthen through the side bodies. Now we're working to bring our biceps back behind our ears. Already I feel this in my shoulders, probably from the strength and cardio class I just did with shoulders, but you start to feel this. Now, if you're wearing your shoulders as earrings, I want you to drop the shoulders down and allow a little soft bend into the arms. That's totally fine for this class, especially as we're getting started. Now, naturally, as we lift our arms up, maybe our belly comes out. I want you to refocus, tuck the tailbone down. The legs are engaged here. The feet still glued down to the earth. Take a big breath in. Breath out, dive forward. Bring your arms wide and you start to fold forward. In Sanskrit, this is Uttanasana, where we fold our chest in half. Maybe you still have your blocks out in front of you for that. That's fine. We inhale, lift halfway up. Either the fingertips are somewhere out in front of you or like the shins, like we did earlier on your blocks. This is Ardha Uttanasana. That just means a half fold. Good. Now I want you to bring your hands back down. Position them, spread all the fingers wide, index fingers parallel to the sides of the mat. And then you step back into that tabletop position. Good. We're collecting our breath here because I want to give us some time as we get into some of the harder portions here. As we shift forward into a push-up, let's start with our knees on the ground. So you want your hips to come forward. You may need to walk your hands out a little bit. But the idea in Chaturanga is to bring your shoulders actually past your wrists. So they're coming forward of your wrist. And now you're getting into the weight of the wrist a little bit more. I want you to think tricep push-up where your elbows graze the sides. Elbows stay in tight. Can you do this for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1? Come all the way down to the belly. Now notice where my hands are in space. Notice my shape that I'm making from the side. It looks like a 90-degree angle somewhere around that, okay? This next posture is called a low cobra pose. Your toenails of each foot, big toenails, they're all touching the ground here. The legs are starting to activate. On an inhale breath, I want you to lift your heart up. Don't worry about how high you go. Just look down the bridge of the nose so there's no strain on the neck. The spine stays neutral, but the legs are starting to activate here. You're going to start to feel this into your low back. It's actually a very challenging posture. Take a big breath in. Breath out, come down. We're going to do that 2 more times. Inhale, lift your heart. Exhale, come down. 1 more time. Inhale, lift. Exhale, come down. Good. And then you're going to just push yourself back up. Your knees can stay on the ground. Push it up. We're going to take our first downward facing dog. I want you to tuck your toes behind you, lift the knees off, and push your hips up and back. Now, your feet can go a lot wider than hip width distance as we get started into this. This may be a lot on the shoulders, so at any point you can come down to the forearms, you can come back to that tabletop position, or even come up onto those fists if you need for more wrist support. Your heels may not be able to reach the ground immediately. I'll add a lot of bend into the knees. Remember how we were bringing our chest towards our thighs? That's fine. The shape that I want you to focus on is this, from your hands to the shoulders, how we're making that arc shape, getting into that of an upper back bend here. Your heels do not have to touch the ground if you've got tight hips. That's okay. Do a little bit of exploration, maybe pedal out the feet. Now the shape you're making is an upside down V. A lot of times your hands are too close to your feet. A lot of times your hands are out too wide, so you're almost in a plank. I want you to find that kind of sweet spot. And I'll tell you a trick on how to find that sweet spot. But first, in your downward dog, which teaching beginner yoga is actually quite hard because you talk a lot more and you hold down dog a lot more. So take breaks as you need. You're going to look at your hands. Spread all of your fingers so you get the most grip, as if you were palming a basketball. That's kind of what I want you to envision for your hands here. Now, on your inhale breath, I want you to roll forward. Shoulders right on top of the wrists. I need to walk my hands out a little bit. I can feel it. so that my shoulders are just directly on top. My index fingers still parallel to the sides of the mat. My hips are as high as my shoulders. This is my high plank position. All I'm gonna do is shift my shoulders back in space and my hips back in space. That's my down dog. Even if my heels are off the mat, this is the space difference that you need to find for yourself. So let's inhale, take it forward again to high plank. Exhale, push it back. One more time, roll forward, inhale. Legs are strong. Exhale, push it back. Fundamentals here. Let's inhale, take it forward to high plank pose. I'm gonna show you what a vinyasa is. Vinyasa involves high plank, chaturanga, up dog, and down dog. Shoulders are on top of the wrists. This is gonna look like a tricep push-up, so shoulders shift forward, elbows come in, and then you roll over the tops of the feet. Your hips, thighs, knees, and shins are all off of the mat. For the sake of this class, you can drop those thighs down. Takes a little bit of the strength required out of it, doing this pose called seals pose. Otherwise, up dog, your hips, knees, shins are all off, the legs are activated, and then you drag and push those hips up and back for downward facing dog. Good. Let's get off of those hands for a second. Walk your feet up to your hands. If you can, step your feet all the way between the hands. Release those wrists for a second. Let's find a halfway lift. Flat back. Exhale, fold it down. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold it down. Rise all the way up. Nice, slow, arms come out to the side. Take enough of a bend into the knees that you need. Reach yourself up. And then bring your hands to heart center. Good work, you guys. Feeling a little bit more accomplished in this. We're at the top of the mat. We're gonna run through what's called Surya Namaskar A. This means a sun salutation. You will see sun salutations in any vinyasa class, so this is a great foundation for you. So you're not like, what's a Surya Namaskar A, right? There's A, B, and C. There's all kinds of different versions. We're gonna work through A today. So starting at the top of the mat, palms come by your sides. Let's just cleanse the breath. Let's take an inhale breath. Exhale, let it go. Amazing. Reach your arms up overhead. Big stretch up. Exhale, dive forward, swan dive into this. Find a halfway lift. Inhale, flat back. Exhale, plant your palms. We're gonna step back to plank pose. Your plank may be knees on the ground. Wherever you are, let's take it. High plank or in the knees, you shift your shoulders past your wrists, elbows stay tight to the body, and you're either going to low cobra or you're extending your arms all the way up for up dog, and you're sending it back, downward facing dog. We are almost done with one sun salutation. All you have to do is get your feet up to meet your hands, so come high into your heels, bend your knees, and then you step your way up to the top of the mat. Fold forward. Let this be an exhale breath. Hang out for a second. And another breath. And then rise all the way up. Arms sweep up overhead. Big stretch up. Exhale, bring your hands to heart center. And then release your hands by your side. So that is one sun salutation A. It can look a lot different. You can add in some handstands, and that comes a lot longer on the journey, right? But today we're just working into these fundamentals. We'll start to add on here in a second, but I want you to feel really good about Sun A. You can take your time. These are usually one breath, one movement, and that's where this vinyasa, this flow comes from. But you can hold your plank for 2 breaths if you want. You can do an up dog for 3 breaths. So we're gonna run through this one more time, however it looks like for you. I obviously can't see you, but I wanna cue you through one Surya Namaskar A one more time, okay? Feet at the top of the mat, big toes touch, little space between the heels, roll the shoulders back, tuck the tailbone. Let's start it out strong. Reach those arms up overhead, big inhale breath, reach up towards the sky. Exhale, dive forward, fold. It's an inhale breath to lift you halfway up. It's an exhale to step back. I'm gonna add an extra inhale in plank. I'm gonna lower on an exhale, chaturanga. I'm gonna lift on an inhale breath. Notice my hips never touch the ground. Exhale breath, downward facing dog. Lift yourself high into the feet, heels come off. Bend your knees, step or a little hop to the top of the mat. Find a halfway lift, inhale. Exhale, you fold. Rise all the way up. Then bring your hands back to heart center on an exhale. So that is about one Surya Namaskar A and how long it takes. With time, as you develop and grow into your practice, your breath, you will be able to extend these breaths. It may be a 5 count inhalation or a 6 count or 7 count or 8 count, and an exhale with matching amount of counts or even more. So with time, you can take even longer into this, really lengthen through the breath, and it starts to feel a little bit more fluid. But when you're first getting started, you're just learning all these movements, right? So I want to be conscious of our wrists. We're going to move into our legs a little bit more, just some fundamentals of what you'll see, some postures that you'll see in a lot of Vinyasa classes. So we're going to just start at the top of the mat. I'm going to go this way. And we'll actually start with the left leg today. So I want you to just step the right foot back like a lunge, okay? So we're going to come down to this right knee. And if you need to drop your hands down to get back to this knee, that's fine. Take your time getting into it. I'm also gonna have blocks on standby just to demo that for you. So right knee down, okay? Hands on the hips to start. This is Anjaneyasana. It's a low lunge. Your tailbone is tucked. Right now my knee is on top of my ankle, my hip on top of the knee. The arms will lift up overhead. That's gonna add the upper body into the equation. And then we tuck the tailbone, that adds the core into the equation. This may be enough for you to even feel a stretch here. Now, if we wanna push into this, we're relying on our left leg strength a little bit more. I want you to push into the knee and send it back behind you as your hips push forward. That left knee always stays on top of the ankle though. Now your hands can be resting on the thigh for a little bit of assistance or even blocks on your hands if you're feeling a little bit wobbly. My cue for you to think about, if you're feeling a little wobbly side to side, is to squeeze the inner thighs together, all right? That's gonna give you a lift, that's gonna give you a little bit of balance, and you're gonna start to feel this activation through the legs a lot more. Good. Now, if you can lift your arms back up. It starts to take shape into a back bend a little bit more. Good, so just stay with the breath. Notice the foot muscles, right, holding you up, finding that balance. Good, we're gonna show next step into crescent. So tuck your back toe, use the blocks if you need, and come off the back knee. Shorten the stance just a little bit so you feel like you're really grounded through those right toes. And hands just come to your hips to start. Sit back into that left lunge and hold. Your back heel is high to the sky, your hips are square. And with your hips square, that'll help your shoulders face forward. So your arms come up overhead. That's where you add the arms in. If at any point the arms are too much, you just stay with your hands on your hips. This is called crescent lunge, okay? We take a big breath in, breath out. Take one more inhale. And exhale. Bring the hands back to the hips. We're gonna step our right foot up to the left. See if we can do that. One big step, right toes to meet the left, and then stand all the way up. So that's one side. I'm gonna show from this side too, just so you can see that extension. We're gonna do the right, even it out. So left toes go back behind you. We come down to the left knee. Take your time. Grab your blocks if you need. And then sink, not sink into your hips first, but we start here, dropping the left knee down, right knee on top of the ankle. So you can see that alignment. Hips are facing forward, shoulders will follow. Roll the shoulders back. Good. And even here, Even though I've got my left knee resting, I'm still active everywhere. I'm tucking my tailbone underneath you. My core is tight. I'm lengthening through my side bodies, especially when I add my arms, my shoulders start to get involved. Let's add in a little bit more into the hips, if that feels okay. Right knee staying somewhere around the left ankle, or sorry, the right ankle. Your arms come up overhead, but remember, you also have your blocks here to support you in this. Now, depending on why you are a beginner in yoga, if it's because of flexibility, maybe not because of strength, you may not need to use your hands. So notice where you tend to lean on something when you maybe don't need to, right? We're gonna add that extra layer of strength, so I want you to tuck your toe underneath you. You can leave your hands on the thigh, you can leave your hands on the blocks, prop off the back knee, you can lean your chest forward to help and hop that back foot in, and then reach your arms up overhead. This is high crescent lunge. So think of it lower to the ground with a knee on the ground, high crescent lunge forward. Arms come up overhead. Hips square is much easier when we have that back heel on the ground. And breathe in, breathe out. Again, your hands can always come down to your hips if it's too much on the shoulders. We'll be here for another breath or two. And then lean forward, step the left foot up to meet the right. Stand all the way up. Good. Wiggle out through the legs. Notice where you're feeling this stretch. Maybe you're tighter into the hip flexors, so you're gonna feel that on the fronts of the legs. Maybe you're starting to feel it into your glutes. Okay, we're gonna run through a few more options here. Just postures that you know that you may see in a class. So we'll start back up this way actually. I wanna take you through Warrior 2. Our hips are gonna be open. So you got to see kind of square hips, and then we're gonna go through Warrior 2. There are 3 different warrior postures: Warrior 1, Warrior 2, Warrior 3. We're gonna workshop Warrior 2, and then eventually later on, we'll workshop some of those more advanced as you're getting into more binds, more things like that. So, top of the mat. Now, your hip is going to open to this side. I want you to bring the right foot back, and as the right foot comes back, you turn the toes to the side. So take a big step back with the right foot. Right toes are about 3 o'clock. So if this is 12, 3, 6, 9, you got it. You know what a clock is, right? So I want you to sink into your hips. Again, we always start with our hands on our hips. We add in our arms later. Left knee stacked on top of the ankle. I know by now you've heard me say that multiple times in different postures. So we're lunging here. This is open hips, square hips towards the front of the room. We're working on open hips in Warrior 2. Now, a big piece of this is the back foot. Even though we're putting weight into that left leg, the right foot is actually working hard. We want to glue that right outer edge down. And we also want to keep our shoulders open towards the side. The arm is eventually going to come out in front of you. The right arm goes back behind, and then you look out over the left fingertips so that the chin is in line with the shoulder. Good. Sink into this, and remember our tailbone, it's staying underneath us. It's not bananaing out. We're not losing our belly here. It's still wrapping in. Our core is still engaged, okay? Back leg is strong. As much as you can, think equal weight into both legs. This one's a burner for the quad. So we'll hold here for just a little bit longer. Good, last 3, 2, 1. Just bring your hands back to your hips, and we're just gonna turn to the other direction. Right toes are gonna face forward, left leg comes back, so pretending this is our front of our mat. 12 o'clock. This is now 9 o'clock, okay? So push into those hips, sink in. You're working towards a 90-degree angle. Of course, you may not be there, but you're working somewhere in that shape. Back foot is around 9 o'clock. Roll the shoulders back. Another really important element piece of our Warrior 2. It's a wide stance, right? If it's too short, you're not gonna be able to sink into that 90-degree angle. If it's too wide, we're not gonna have enough grip, and it's too much to sink into. So, the other part, where your feet are matters. So I always draw an imaginary line from my front heel to the middle of my back arch, right? It should be somewhere in the middle. Sometimes there's some alignment where it's heel to heel, but I like to stay with heel to arch. I feel like that's where I find my sweet spot of balance. But you want to find that too. It's not always going to be perfectly the same from person to person, but as we're getting started, it's a good measuring point. So glue that left outer edge down, sink into those hips, extend your arms out. Add in that strength, sit low. Good, last 3, 2, and 1. Bring those hands back up and then turn yourself to the side now. Just because we can, we're gonna take a wide leg fold. This will feel nice for the hamstrings. It'll be a little break on those legs after you've been holding some lunge positions. So bring your hands to your hips. With a flat back, just fold yourself over and release. Now, we tend to put our weight all back into our heels. I want you to bring a little bit more weight into the ball mat of the feet. This is great. You can use a block out in front of you for your hands or for your forearms. Good. Big breath in. Breath out. A lot of elements that we went through today. It'll take some time cementing, so this is a great class to come back to. Good. Lift yourself halfway up. Turn your toes back to the top of the mat, and then go back to a forward fold for a second. I want you to wiggle your feet out wide, toes out, heels in. So we just did that wide leg fold in hopes that we can get some external rotation into the hips for a malasana, a low squat. This is gonna come in handy later. Now, if your heels are not on the ground, widen your stance. The other helpful piece is sitting on a block. Could be on the upper level, could be on the lower level. This position here is fantastic. We're using our elbows to push into the knees, and I want our heart to be lifted. This is also super helpful when you're getting into some more strength training. If you're doing like squatting, we really want our heart elevated. We're working into those hips more, and we're actively pushing our hands together. Those of you that are not on a block, and actually those of you that are on a block, I want you to lift out of your seat just an inch. So lifting up a little bit, you're gonna feel the activation. If those of you on a block need to sit back down and do it again a few times, that's a great way to check in with those leg muscles. Heart stays open, toes are out, your knees are in line with your toes. Last 3, good, 2, 1, gently come back down. If you have a block underneath you, move it off to the side. Come on down to your sits bones. We're gonna take a seated forward fold. This is gonna be legs together, seated forward fold. So push your hips back for a second, your legs together. Those of you with tight hamstrings, I want you to sit up on a block again, okay? Maybe on that lower level, probably. Legs come out in front of you. Your legs don't even have to be straight, that's fine. It's just the idea of rounding forward. So I want your arms to come up overhead, and then fold into this. Reach your hands towards your toes, drop into the shoulders, soften. Now, if you wanna keep this really active in the upper body, think about your biceps as if you were doing a curl. Pull yourself in. You're gonna feel this more of a stretch in hamstrings, into the low back. And if you are like, I just need this to be passive so that nothing else tenses, you can just drop your hands. You don't have to reach for your feet. Remember, you may not need to be elevated with the hips. The hips elevated just helps us, those that are tight in the hips and hamstrings, and kind of limit our range. So this is just a great alternative. You can also sit on a pillow, a blanket, books. Good. Roll yourself back up. Shift onto one side. Move that block out of the way. We're coming down onto our backs. Our practice really changes now. Vinyasa, yes, there's breath to movement, but towards the end, a cool down and a warm up is really important. So bring those knees in towards the chest. We're gonna get into our hips now. I want you to release left leg down, cross your right ankle over the left thigh. This is figure 4. Now this may be enough of a stretch. The goal of reclined figure 4, this little 4 shape that we're making, is to keep the hips, the tailbone heavy on the ground, the head, the shoulders heavy on the ground. So this may be where you are today. You may be able to lift the left foot off and interlace the hands around the shin, or maybe the hamstring, just depending on where you are. I don't want to see this tight and pulling. Bring yourself back down, even if that means dropping the left foot to the ground. A lot of postures that you see in Vinyasa really require some hips, some hip strength, some balancing. So this is essential to keep working on the hips. They're a big area, big important area of the body. Wrap around the front, all around the back, connect to the glutes, hamstrings, all interconnected with the rest of the body. Let your breath calm back down. We're on our backs now, so that means the end is near. Good. Let's switch it out. Left ankle crosses over the right. Again, your foot may be on the ground. It may be off, interlaced around the shin. Just a few slow breaths on this side. Maybe you can feel your breath accessing those parts of the body where there's resistance or tightness. By closing the eyes, you can visualize, create in the mind that opening space, more flexibility, less resistance. Last breath. Exhale, let it go. Bring the legs all the way down to the ground, feet go wide, and knock your knees in towards each other. Maybe windshield wiper the legs side to side. Good. All right, let's take a supine twist. This always feels really nice as a closing posture. So shift your hips over to the left side of your mat and just let your knees fall on top of each other. Your left shoulder is going to stay down. The idea is that you're twisting all the way through the spine. Left shoulder stays down, and then because our neck is connected to the spine, let your head go the opposite direction of the way your knees are going. So shoulders stay down. Let this be a practice for your breath since the body is staying relatively still. Think of the breath in the base of the spine and imagine it traveling all the way through the crown of the head, leaving the body. And your inhales bring you length and expansion. Your exhales allow you to deepen into the twist. Allow the body to be heavier. Bring yourself back to the center. Shift. Hips come over to the right now. Shoulders stay heavy. Knees drop to the left. Your left hand can aid in dropping the knees over. Let your gaze follow the opposite direction of where your knees go. Breath in, breath out. Soften through the shoulders. Let the hips drop. And draw yourself back in through the center. My favorite part, you get to give yourself a hug, wrap your forearms around your shins, forehead up to the knees, squeeze everything really, really tightly. Take a big exhale breath and release. Fill up as much space on your mat as possible. Shavasana, this is meant for you to recover, be still, finding a few moments of silence. If your mind wanders to other things, that is normal, that is okay. Just come back to the body, and notice how the body connects with the floor, the ground beneath you, your mat. And feel the positioning of the body in space and where you fill up space. Your body softens, your breath softens. These moments of stillness here on your back are just as important as the rest of the postures that we explored today. So please give time to this. If your schedule allows, remain here. If you're ready to invite movement back into the body, waking up slowly, let your head go side to side, roll out the ankles and the toes. Reach your arms over your head like you're waking up for the first time in the morning, big stretch. Then exhale, roll over onto your favorite side. Use your arm as a pillow. The knees come in towards the chest, keeping your eyes soft lowered. A moment on your side to feel gratitude for the body. For the body supporting you in every posture. For showing up, giving yourself this time. Allowing this gratitude to bleed into the rest of our days. Making ourselves lighter, a sense of ease. Come up into a comfortable seat. Move slowly, eyes closed if you can, lowered. Bringing your hands to heart center. Together we take one final inhale breath through the nose. Exhale, open the mouth. Thumbs come between the brows, third eye center. The light and love in me honors and recognizes the light and love in you. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining in on this intro beginner vinyasa. So many more in part of this series to come, but that was the first little taste of it. Please come back, revisit it, and always around to answer questions you guys may have along the way. Thanks so much. See you next time.